On a cold, rainy night in April 2009, the hallway of the Marriott Hotel in Boston lay silent, swallowed by darkness. The sound of a young woman's high heels echoed against the polished tiles, hurried, uneven, as if something were urging her to walk faster. No one in the hotel that night could have imagined that just a few hours later, this place would become the scene of one of the most chilling crimes America had ever witnessed. When the police were called, they discovered the body of a woman inside a luxury suite. The room showed no signs of forced entry. No screams had ever pierced the air. Everything looked like an ordinary meeting, except for the victim's lifeless eyes, frozen wide open, and the cord tightened brutally around her neck. News spread like wildfire. People whispered about a faceless killer lurking somewhere in the city. But no one suspected that the perpetrator would turn out to be Philip Markoff, a second-year medical student, handsome, promising, with a bright future and a wedding just months away. Before the name Craigslist Killer hit the headlines, Markoff was seen as the perfect man. Tall, attractive, intelligent, polite. He earned admiration from friends, trust from professors, and unwavering faith from his fiancée, who believed she was about to marry a brilliant young doctor, a dream husband. Yet beneath that polished mask lay a dark world no one close to him could have ever imagined. Philip wasn't seeking thrills in parties or drugs. What he craved was power, the intoxicating control he felt when standing over a terrified, helpless victim. The internet, and specifically Craigslist, with its endless ads for dates and services, became the perfect gateway to feed his secret addiction. He spent hours behind a screen, cloaked in charm and courtesy, carefully selecting his prey. Young women advertising massage services, eager to make quick money and often too trusting, became his ideal targets. With intelligence and meticulous planning, Markoff always knew how to win their trust and lure them into meeting him in upscale hotels. To the outside world, he was a brilliant student and a devoted fiancé. But once the hotel door closed, he transformed into a predator, devoid of humanity, driven only by the cold hunger of a bloodthirsty beast. The first victim's death was not just a murder. It marked the beginning of a haunting chain of questions. How could a medical student, trained to save lives, become a merciless killer? And as the truth slowly came to light, the public shuddered with the realization. Sometimes the monsters we fear most are not strangers in the dark, but the very people we trust, standing right beside us. By day, Philip Markoff was the picture of admiration. Tall, clean-cut, with neat blonde hair and a bright, handsome face, he stood out like a star in the lecture halls of medical school. Professors praised his intelligence, classmates envied his talent. Volunteer patients remembered the polite smile of the young student doctor. He also had a picture-perfect romance with Megan McAllister, a fellow medical student. They had met during a hospital volunteer program and instantly became a golden couple. Friends described them as a real-life Ken and Barbie, so flawless it was almost unreal. The two got engaged, planning a dream wedding at a seaside resort. But every fairy tale hides a shadow. Philip Markoff began to drift into the world of the internet. Not just for studying, he spent hours trawling online classified sites, especially Craigslist. At the time, Craigslist was more than a marketplace for second-hand goods or job postings. It had a darker corner, a hidden place where anonymous strangers sought quick satisfaction, discreet arrangements no one else needed to know about. Markoff was drawn to it. At first, it was mere curiosity. He browsed the services section, quietly observing. But curiosity soon evolved into obsession. Behind the polished mask of a doctor-to-be, he was sinking deeper into temptation. In the small apartment where he lived, Markoff began to experiment with darkness. He lurked in hidden forums, saved shady ads, and started corresponding with women who offered services on Craigslist. There was a terrifying contradiction inside him. On one side, the brilliant medical student devoted to a profession built on saving lives. On the other, a man consumed by curiosity, craving control, edging further into danger, watching, scheming, hunting. He knew how to keep his two worlds apart.
By day, he studied, laughed with his fiancée, and planned their wedding. But when night fell, he sat before his computer screen, searching for his next potential victim. There were signs Megan might have noticed had she looked closer. Sometimes Markov grew cold, his gaze distant mid-conversation. He hid his phone, wiped his browser history. Yet Megan, blinded by love, never suspected a thing. To her, Philip was everything. The perfect future husband, the compassionate doctor-to-be, the safe harbor she could cling to. It was that absolute trust that concealed the monster awakening inside him. One night, as Megan slept, Markov flipped open his laptop. The pale blue glow lit his face. On the screen appeared messages, secret meetings, ambiguous deals. His fingers typed quickly, his lips curling into a faint, unreadable smile. In his mind, a dark thought was taking shape. It was no longer just chatting, no longer curiosity. He wanted more. He wanted to step out from behind the screen, to turn typed words into grim reality. He didn't yet realize that with one step forward, he would tumble straight into the abyss. Time passed, and something inside him shifted. He began to feel powerful. With just a few clicks, he could orchestrate a meeting hidden from everyone else. That sense of control thrilled him, more intoxicating than the oath of
medicine itself. By day, he held a scalpel to learn the art of healing. By night, he fantasized about gripping a knife to inflict harm. The two worlds overlapped more and more. One man, two faces, and only he knew the truth. The wedding plans carried on. Megan joyfully tried on her dress, flashing her ring to friends with a smile. Meanwhile, Markov was preparing for another kind of ritual, a ceremony drenched in shadows. In his digital journal, he kept meticulous notes. Craigslist appointments, times, places, hotel room numbers. Each number, each line of text was another piece of a hidden plan no one else could imagine. A brilliant medical student, a perfect fiancé, a secret Craigslist addict. 3 faces belonging to one man. And the darkness inside him was swelling, consuming everything. When the clock struck midnight, Philip Markov stood before the mirror. He looked into his own eyes, cold, empty. And perhaps in that moment he understood. The bright young student was gone. All that remained was a hunter, thirsting for blood in the shadows. By day, Philip Markov still wore the pristine white coat of a medical student. By night, he became an invisible predator. Craigslist's virtual world turned into his hunting ground, a jungle where he stalked the weak, hiding behind a computer screen, fingers typing with the calm precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. In the late 2000s, Craigslist was a bustling marketplace. You could find anything there. Jobs, used furniture, even discreet services that no one dared to question. It was in the personal services section that Markov discovered fertile soil for his sick hunger. He didn't choose at random. Each victim was carefully studied. He spent hours staring at the glow of his monitor, analyzing every line of text. A young woman advertising private massage? Perfect. A single woman willing to meet clients in hotel rooms? Ideal. He wasn't looking for sex. He was hunting for power, control, and the twisted thrill of someone else's fear. In his messages, he always sounded polite, even charming. His words were clean, thoughtful, carrying the image of an educated young man. No one suspected that behind those courteous sentences, a deadly trap was closing in. One drizzly night, Markov walked down the hallway of a mid-range hotel in Boston. The musty carpet mixed with the faint scent of cheap perfume left by passing guests. In the pocket of his coat, a small handgun pressed coldly against his skin, a reminder that this night would not end quietly. He knocked. The door opened, and a young woman smiled, only for that smile to freeze when her eyes met his empty gaze. Within seconds, the room—
Please. He didn't kill right away. He prolonged the moment, like a cruel artist savoring the symphony of terror. After leaving the hotel, Markov became someone else again. He drove home, slipped into his fiancée's arms, whispered sweet words as if nothing had happened. To her, he was still the promising young man, the ideal husband-to-be. But inside, a black hole was widening, demanding more victims to fill its void. The next attacks grew bolder. Some women managed to survive, but all carried scars of terror that would never fade. They described a man who seemed polite, well-dressed, until his eyes suddenly transformed into blazing pits of darkness. The most terrifying part wasn't that he killed. It was the way he lived between two worlds, one of love, career, and dreams, the other damp and blood-stained, where he prowled as a cold-blooded hunter. These two faces existed in the same body, so seamlessly intertwined that it became impossible to tell which was real. And with time, his cravings grew stronger. Craigslist was no longer just a diversion. It became the direct path to the moments when he felt absolute power. But like every predator lost in delusion, he had no idea that every trace he left behind, every message, every hotel camera, was slowly weaving the rope that would bind him in his own trap. On April 14, 2009, the crisp spring air in Boston seemed calm, no different from any other day. But inside a small room at the Marriott Hotel, a cold-blooded drama was about to unfold, a crime that would etch itself into the annals of American criminal history. Julissa Brisman, a 26-year-old woman, entered the hotel lobby, cautious but not overly afraid. She was used to meeting clients through online advertisements. This time, she had arranged to see a man who appeared polite, confident, a tall figure, well-dressed, looking every bit like a businessman or a young doctor. No one suspected that he was Philip Markov. Julissa went up to the room and opened the door. The man was waiting, a half-smile flickering across a face that seemed harmless. But the moment the door clicked shut, that smile disappeared. In his hand, the cold glint of steel revealed a handgun. "Sit down," he ordered, his voice firm, hollow, stripped of warmth. Fear flooded the room. Julissa trembled, tried to reason with him, but Markov ignored her. He closed in, gripping her tightly, then bound her with plastic ties he had brought along. Everything unfolded with the
fought back. He felt control slipping through his hands. In that instant, he raised the gun. The deafening blast ripped through the stillness of the hotel. Julissa's body crumpled, blood seeping into the carpet, staining it a deep crimson. The room had become a slaughterhouse. Markov's breathing quickened. He stared at her lifeless body, and in his eyes there was no remorse, only a chilling sense of release, even satisfaction. A dark thrill surged through him, leaving him trembling and exhilarated at once. He rifled through her belongings, taking small personal items as if they were trophies. Then, with eerie composure, he hid the weapon, adjusted his clothes, and walked out. The entire encounter had lasted less than 15 minutes. In the hallway, surveillance cameras captured him leaving, a tall figure, head slightly bowed, moving quickly but not suspiciously enough to draw attention. No one in the hotel realized they had just passed a cold-blooded killer. Back in that chilling room, Julissa Brisman's body lay motionless, her eyes frozen wide open, as if still following the man who had stolen her life. A soul abandoned in silence inside a hotel once meant to embody safety and comfort. Now, it had become a chapel of death. At last, Boston police began piecing together the scattered fragments. From the hotel's surveillance cameras, they recognized a familiar face, a medical student, with a bright smile and eyes that radiated confidence. The name landed like a cold blade slicing through the grave atmosphere: Philip Markoff. He wasn't the homeless drifter or filthy addict people often imagined when they pictured a killer. On the contrary, Markoff was the very image of an ideal citizen, handsome, intelligent, with a dazzling future ahead of him, and soon to be married to his sweet fiancée. Yet behind that polished mask lurked a fathomless darkness. Investigators searched his apartment. Inside an unnervingly tidy closet, they found something that made every breath catch: an old, worn canvas bag. When it was opened, the metallic tang of cold steel hit the air. Inside lay duct tape, a gun, handcuffs, and an assortment of small, sinister tools, the instruments of a predator. The bright apartment instantly transformed into a hidden slaughterhouse. When arrested, Markoff remained eerily composed. He sat in the interrogation room with a faint, mocking smile. No sweat, no panic. His answers were curt, fragmented, sometimes nothing more than an empty stare. Detectives began to realize, sitting before them was no longer a medical student, but a hollow shell filled with secrets. In the days that followed, the press erupted. Many monsters wore the mask of ordinary life, lurking behind computer screens, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Boston would never sleep soundly again. In every dark alley, in the yellow glow of every street lamp, the ghost of the Craigslist Killer seemed to linger, wearing that dreadful smile, a reminder that not every door you knock on online leads to opportunity. Some doors open only to hell. On the day of his trial, Philip Markoff appeared in an orange prison jumpsuit, no longer the white coat of a medical student, no longer the polished image of the golden boy. Only a hollow face remained, gaunt and pale, his lifeless eyes staring straight ahead. The media crowded outside. Thousands followed the proceedings. The name Craigslist Killer had become a symbol of betrayed trust, a promising young man revealed as a predator in the night. Prosecutors laid out evidence that could not be denied: fingerprints on duct tape, surveillance footage tracing his every step, and the infamous hunting kit hidden in his apartment. Markoff remained silent. No explanations, no excuses, not a single apology to the victim's family, only a stony expression, as though he had already shed every trace of humanity. At last, the verdict was handed down: life in prison without parole. The courtroom erupted with a mixture of relief and fury. Justice, it seemed, had been served, the monster locked away, never to kill again. But the story didn't end there. On August 15, 2010, Suffolk County Jail became the site of another tragedy. Guards discovered Markoff lying motionless in his cell. His wrists had been slashed deep, blood spreading across the concrete floor. On the wall, scrawled in blood, were cryptic words. Perhaps the name of his former fiancée, perhaps a final message cast into the void. Philip Markoff had chosen his own ending, turning his cell into a private execution chamber. News of his death spread like wildfire. Some felt relief that the devil was gone. Others shivered, unsettled that he had carried his secrets to the grave. No one truly knew what had driven a gifted medical student into the abyss of becoming a cold-blooded killer. Greed, addiction, or a darkness born within, waiting all along for the right moment to emerge? To this day, the question lingers, unanswered.
The story of the Craigslist Killer is not just a tale of horror, it is a warning. In the modern world, even the most perfect faces may conceal monsters. And sometimes, evil doesn't come from distant shadows, but from a single click online.